Hi, everybody. Welcome back to So Wide Open with me, your host, Michelle Renee. And today is actually, I believe, going to be one of the most significant, important interviews that I will probably ever do in my entire life. I'm interviewing somebody today that no one, including myself a long time ago, no one ever would have expected me to be sitting next to, talking to, not only about his story, my story, but our collective, deeply, deeply connected story. I'm going to be sitting down with the person who broke the door down to our home, came into our home, held us hostage, kidnapped us, and he was involved in a really, really violent crime against myself and my daughter. And today, we're going to be talking about what it looks like when we choose to heal our entire life and when we put love, compassion, and understanding at the absolute center of our lives, and we share that message not only with our children, our families, but with the world. So with all of that said, I'm already going to get emotional right here, right out of the gate, talking about my guest, Robert Ortiz. Thank you so much for being here and doing this. We've been talking about this for, how long have we been talking about this?
Some years now.
Yeah, some years now. And also, guess who's joining us today? One of the most important people in my life. My brother Dave is here. He was at every single day of the trial. He was there from the moment this happened, as soon as he could get to Bria and I, to be there to support us, to lift us up, to help us through our healing journey. He's been a part of this the entire way through. And we're all going to talk about how interesting it is that some of the things that Dave went through in his life actually connect him and Robert in a way that is truly, truly remarkable. So I want to just get into it and just talk to me a little bit about who is Robert Ortiz? Who is this man sitting with me here today? How did it all begin for you? Your life, your childhood? Just talk to me about where you come from and how everything just began for you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I was born to Maria Guadalupe Verduzco Cáceres and Luis Arturo Ortiz in Goleta, California, which is right above Santa Barbara. At about 3 years old, we moved to Hawaii. My father was in the military. And we lived there from when I was about 3 to 6.5. My siblings came along, my sister Lorena, my little brother was born in Hawaii. In '81, we moved to Oceanside, California, Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base, and had a beautiful upbringing, sometimes a little mischievous, but just beautiful, family structured home. It was tight, challenging at times, but we always had a roof over our head, and we always had something to eat, whether it was a lot or we had to divvy up the little bit, you know? Yeah. And it was good, and everything was fine, you know? Troubles we got into as kids and stuff, but nothing like very alarming. And then we moved off the military base into a area that was a bit crime, drug, and gang infested. By this time, it was 4 of us. My baby sister was born on the military base. And slowly, I started listening to some of my friends that were also on the military base, and their parents moved off the base. And what I listened to was that I took care of my siblings because my father was overseas or in between jobs after getting out the military, and my mom would be at work a lot. So I had to care for them in every way: homework, making sure that things got done in the house, making food for them, and trying to have everything ready before mom gets home, because nobody wants to work once they get off work.
Your mom was working, so your dad was gone, your mom was out of the house, and you were kind of became the man of the house. At what age?
I would say from early on, 8, 9, 10 maybe, full-fledged when my baby sister was born, helping out with her. By 11, I would change her diapers, give her baths, and make sure that everything was tidied up.
What was that like? Was that a lot of pressure? How did that's a lot for somebody that age.
I didn't think of it as a lot of pressure, you know. I just thought about, that they're preparing me for life. Not at that time, I didn't think so, but once we moved off the military base and listen, everybody wants to come over and be like, hey, Bobby, come outside. And I got to take care of siblings and do housework. Then eventually I started listening to that. Like, they were like, that's not your job. And I thought about it, and it wasn't my job. It's my job to help, but not also be like doing mom and dad jobs all the time, you know? So a lot of my childhood did consist of me taking care of my siblings. So eventually I got tired of it, and I started listening to it, hanging out more, coming home late, smoking weed, and started rebelling, and it started feeling good to have a little liberty and be out, you know? So, at about 16, I ran away because I got tired of hearing that I was coming home late. I wasn't going to school. I was ditching a lot. And I just didn't want to be in that situation no more, so I left and stayed out on the streets. Started hanging out with people that were gang affiliated. And at about 17, I went to juvenile hall for a stolen vehicle.
First time you went to juvenile hall for what? What did you go to juvenile hall for?
It was for a stolen car.
Okay.
And evading the police officer at dangerous speeds. But I know I had a conscience always, anytime I did anything. I think I have a strong one that really just tells me, hey. So I pulled over, and I got caught. My buddy he got away. But I got caught, and I was just scared I was going to hit somebody because it was an alley right behind Hill Street, which is Coast Highway now. And I got caught, and I got roughed up a bit in juvenile hall and the back and forth, and they wanted me to stay longer, and I was not trying to stay in juvenile hall longer, so my mom vouched for me to get released to her. And by that time, the family, while I was in juvenile hall, moved back to Santa Barbara. And I'm glad that they did, because I didn't want them to get swallowed up the same way that I had started to. So my mom did get her wish, and so did I. I got released to her as long as I left the county, till I was off probation or 18. So I went to Santa Barbara. I tried to cope, and I just couldn't. Like, the streets of Oceanside were calling me, so like 3.5 months later, I ran away at 17. And that started my whole life of elevation of crime, gang involvement, selling drugs, and just a whole different lifestyle that I'd adapted, and just left what I learned at home, and just normalized this lifestyle for so long that it was like, if I didn't do it, something was wrong, If I didn't have that type of survival skill living on the streets like that, then it was more like if you don't survive, you'll get ate up. So I did what I had to do to survive these streets. And eventually my crimes escalated. And from there, I went to county jail sometimes, was on bail a few times, double bail, I think it's triple bail at one time. And then at 19, I was involved in an indictment for sales of narcotics. And I went away for about 2 years, prison, 19, got out, I was 21. I did well for a bit, stayed out of trouble, but didn't find a job. I did odd jobs. Still had a lot of, I won't even say 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I still had 2 feet in, just trying to keep my nose clean though. And I got a violation at like 22 years old. I was almost going to get off parole, and I had a friend in the car, and he was a gang member, and I wasn't allowed to be a gang member with gang members because I was a gang member documented at the time. So it was a violation. So I went back to prison, 6 months. But this time where I went to, they put me at like a maximum security prison, so it was like a little more amped up. I got 6 months to do, and I got people in the yard that's got hundreds of years to do.
Right.
And, you know, just really taking that in, it was like, wow. So, and then I seen some of my guys, and they had life sentences, so I'm like, they told me some pretty deep stuff, and I listened, and then I didn't listen.
If you could identify one thing that was sort of kept calling you back to this life in the streets, what can you identify? Was it a sense of belonging? Was it a sense of pride? What was it that kept calling you back to this lifestyle? Can you identify what kept calling you back?
Well, a little bit ago I said that I adopted a whole different lifestyle, normalized it. So this became my new family. That's how normal it was. This became my new family. And, you know, I wouldn't be here today talking if it wasn't for some of them, and vice versa.
So that's a really good, yeah, that's a really good point. So you not only, I mean, you're doing things that are, you know, terrible with these people, but you're also building deep bonds, and a lot of them are those deep sort of trauma bonds that you're building with these people that become really, really important to you, like you said, just like family. So these connections that you're making with these people, they're not necessarily superficial like people might think. Some of these bonds are really, really deep, like you feel like these are your brothers, right? And sisters?
Yeah, some to this day that have elevated from that spot we were in the 90s and take what we have and use that as medicine as well in their own way, even if not the same way I do. They're doing positive things. And we also did some positive things, you know, for the community, but it wasn't a very well balanced, you know?
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about how you ended up in a situation where someone literally came to you, and I believe it was very last minute, where they said, hey, we're planning this thing. We're going to bring you into this plan. Very last minute. Unbeknownst to me, we were being stalked and followed for a long time. The plan to carry out the crime that happened involving myself and my daughter, it was being planned for a long time. This is a very premeditated plan, but all of that premeditation did not involve you. You didn't come into this until pretty much last minute. And then to carry out something like this, talk me through what that was like for you. How did that happen? And not just how it happened, but how do you process something like that and say to yourself, this is worth it, or this is something that I'm going to be okay with? How do you justify making a decision to do something like this?
Okay, so what led me to that was after that violation, like I said, I had still 2 feet in, but I was keeping my nose clean, staying good with my PO and everything. And it's about 3 years I stayed out. That was the longest at the time. I've surpassed that now. So this is the longest I've been home since starting juvenile hall, basically. And it feels great.
I love that.
Congratulations,
Yeah,
by the way.
so good.
Appreciate it. I couldn't have done it with everybody that was not part of my body, that was part of it, was why I'm at where I'm at.
Yeah.
But after about 3 years, I was working 2 jobs. I was a towel setter by day and worked at the bowling alley on the military base at night. And I decided to go out one time. I remember it was a Thursday with my buddy to the club in Escondido. And on the way back, we both been drinking, but he was like a bit pissy drunk, and I was intoxicated. And he didn't want to leave his car. And I was like, we can get a ride, man. There's these girls. We got the homies over here. We could get a ride. It's fine. We'll come get your car later. he didn't want to leave it because it got broken into last time he left it there, and they stole the system and everything. So then I'm like, well, I'm not going to let him drive, pissy drunk. I'm the less drunk, so I'm going to drive. So I get a DUI eventually on that trip. And I was on parole. So now I'm in there and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get violated. So I called my parole officer, explained to her what happened. And because I was doing so good and I had 2 jobs, she pushed hard for me to see if I would not get violated and let me see what's going to happen with my DUI. And they didn't put a hold on me, so I got released on my own recognizance, but I had to not work a job, so I had to bring down 1 job because the DUI class was very demanding in what you had to do, and if you mess up, you have to start the class all over, and it was thousands of dollars for that class. And very time-consuming, a lot of fines, a lot of meetings. But one thing I didn't do was working on the side of the freeway, cleaning up for Caltrans for 30 days. I asked, can I get another fine? Because I would have to just have no jobs.
Right.
So I didn't do that. A warrant came out for my arrest after like the 3rd time that I requested it. And once that happened, I left where I was living with my ex-wife at the time, with my wife at the time, ex-wife now, and I hit the streets. I hit the streets because I'm like, everything felt like it was closing in on me. I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm not going to use no excuses because ultimately I made the wrong decision. But it definitely was not very helpful that they wouldn't work with me, given that I already gave a job up. So I went back to what I knew how to do, was sell drugs.
Would you say that you were just pissed? You were pissed that this was happening again and they weren't working with you? And was it just kind of like...
I wasn't really pissed.
Have like a F it moment?
I wasn't really pissed. I was more disappointed.
Yeah.
And seeing how things are set up for me to fail. Like, not that I couldn't make it, because it's people that make it, but you got to navigate extra tight, you know? Yeah. My path has not been very wide or very deep, and I haven't had good hands, but I've realized that none of that is a reason for me to make bad decisions today.
So you hit the streets, you met somebody that said...
I hit the streets and started doing what I can do for money, some legal things, some illegal things. And I knew a couple of fellas, and I was approached about possibly, doing a bank job. And, that's not my stuff, It's nothing that I would be involved in. But desperation changed my mind. I had a daughter, a stepdaughter, and another baby on the way at the time. And I started feeling like less of a man, because my understanding of a man then was different from what it is today.
Well, you became the man that was providing for your family at a really young age, not necessarily bringing in the income, but your, that sort of mindset of what a man is, and taking care of the women in your family and doing everything you can to support this family. Now here you are later on in life, you're an adult, and you can't even do this as an adult. So for you to start to be feeling like less of a man, I feel like that even goes back to you feeling like you were providing and taking care of from a very early age, and now you can't even do that now. So my point being, this is all so connected. This is all, I see this thread of all of this being connected all the way back to childhood. Even now, even in what you're saying now.
Yeah. One of my biggest triggers is losing control, and it's in my parole pack. And I stress it to people that have so much responsibility, because also that losing control also came back to the times that I almost drowned by not listening. So I lost control. Or if I lose control of the household and don't do my job, I'd be held accountable for that by mom. Right. So losing control was a big one for me,
And you were losing control of your finances. You were losing control over the ability to provide for your family with a baby on the way. The responsibilities were stacking up.
Correct.
And then what?
So then I went back to my mindset of getting money how I can, trying to cause the least harm to anybody as possible. But I was also very desperate. I didn't want to call home and ask for help in Santa Barbara, because at that time I would have felt like less of a man, saying, Dad, Mom, this was going on, you know? So I didn't ask for help, and I took it into my own hands. And
is that something that's prevalent in the group that you were hanging out with? The mindset of, I don't need help, I'm going to do this on my own. I feel like that might be something that a lot of people in that circle may share in common, that they don't reach out for help. They don't call their family for help. I feel like that's a big part of when, because I ran away when I was almost 16 as well. Dave and I both, we left home at really young ages, and we grew up, and this is something that goes way back to when I was thinking about you after the crime and after healing. I kept thinking that these people don't know me at all. They only know me as this bank manager. They don't know that we have more in common than we don't have in common. I ran away at a really young age. I grew up in a violent home. We grew up in a violent home. I did a ton of drugs. I lived out on the street for a little while. I literally stole a car and slept in my friend's truck that I took from him in the middle of the night to have a place to sleep. And everything that I had that belonged to me was in the big, dark green, black, hefty bag. And I would use that to put my head on to sleep at night in the front seat of the truck because I needed a place to sleep. And I kept thinking, like, if they only knew how much we could sit down and have a conversation about what we've been through and what you've been through and the commonalities that we have. And I think one of the things that happens when you run away and you're in survival mode, almost your entire life from a really early age, that mindset of, I can't reach out to call anybody and ask for help because I'm going to feel like less of a man, or I'm going to feel like a loser. That means they're going to be right, that I'm never going to make it. Like, there's so much psychology to that I think plays such a big role in so many people's lives that end up in the position that you were in, and the group that you were in, and the position that I was in as well.
I would say for me, it wasn't like my circle's belief system of not asking for help, because I'm going to just be honest, like 80 to 90% of my circle doesn't even have any help. I had the most help. I had a mom and dad. I chose to leave, even if it was tight. But a lot of my circle didn't have that. Yeah. They're less fortunate than me. So I can't use that as an excuse.
So tell me what happened after.
So I was approached about a bank job, and I was like, wow, that's not like something I get into. But I listened, and I became involved after the plan was intact. The plan changed along the way, which was the time that we came to your house. I did not know it was going to be a child in the house. By the time I realized it was a child in the house, we were already in the house. And at that point, I just didn't know to get the hell out of here with my dog that I brought, or how far I was in. And I just felt like I was so far in that I couldn't just leave now, So
how did you know to be the one to handle Bria, my daughter, because you were the one that was responsible for grabbing her and putting her to the ground at gunpoint, and how did you know? So that wasn't a role that was set up before you got in the house. Did that just happen? That just happened.
So when we broke in the house, And we seen y'all playing that little game on the couch. I didn't know what I was gonna do. So I just went for Bria because I felt like I can cause the least damage, if any, if that makes any crazy sense.
The least damage to her.
Yeah, like, as crazy as it sounds, like, how can I be the most genuine of so fucked up mannerism? And so that's why I just went there, like nobody told me to, like, because of the way that I was raised to care for kids and my own siblings.
Talk me through how, through the night, how did you process what was happening? And I do want to say right now, this is the first time I've ever heard you talk about why you were the one who was responsible for Bria. For you to say, I can do the least amount of damage in this completely horrible, horrific decision situation that I have made, and you came in that door, busted through the door, and you knew instantly you were the one that was going to cause the least amount of damage. That's the first time I've ever heard this. And it makes sense to me now because I know you now. And this goes back to when you were saying you were driving through the alley and you pulled over because you didn't want to hit anybody in the crowded alley. Again, there is a thread here, and there's a reason why you and I are sitting here, because this thread that it has never left you, probably from the way you were raised with your mom.
Absolutely, and dad.
And dad.
And siblings.
And siblings, this thread
and friends
never left you. You always had a piece of that humanity that did not leave you. And we're going to get to why you and I are sitting here today because of that piece of humanity that never left you. So how did you get through the night? How did you get through the whole night and not bolt out of the house?
Because part of that time I felt I was in too deep, and every time I wanted to leave, I see my kid's face.
So the money, you were like, I need to provide for my family.
That's my driving force.
Well, that night for us was, I lost my career. My daughter was never the same child ever again. I was never the same. That destroyed our life in so many ways that night. But I want to say that night broke open me in ways that I could never, ever, ever have imagined. And it took a lot of time to heal, and it took a lot of time for me to come to a place where I could listen and begin to wonder about you, what happened to you, and begin to think about you as someone's son, as someone's brother, as someone's dad. And that question, really, when I drove from San Diego to Alaska, that continued to come up over and over and over and would not leave me alone, wondering about who this person is. And the first part, the first time I ever started to really think about this, and now we go through the night, we go through the arrest, this happens, the police get involved, the FBI gets involved the next morning, they come, I rob the bank, I'm forced to rob the bank, you guys keep my daughter, we're strapped with what we were told were dynamite, threatened to be blown up and murdered if I didn't do absolutely everything I was told to do to perfection, which brings on a whole other level of PTSD for me. And even growing up, this goes back to the way we were raised. If we didn't do something perfect and the house wasn't perfectly clean and all of these things, there was hell to pay. My dad would go into rages if things weren't right? So we were already used to walking around in our lives growing up on eggshells constantly. And so after something like this, it even heightened it even more. I mean, any little mess up that I would make meant catastrophe, meant pain, meant it was just absolutely something so terrible. I was so afraid if I messed up on anything that literally my life was going to blow up, you know? So there was so much about this event and the PTSD for me that tied into our childhood. So when you guys broke down that door to the house, and this is interesting too, because now this thing, this bomb, pun intended, going off in our lives in that house that night that brought us together, literally blew up my life in a way that the pieces, when they fell together, when they fell, it was my childhood coming together. I had to look at my entire life after this, every single part of my life, and choose to heal every single part of my life if I was going to make it through this, if I was going to get my daughter through this in the best possible way. And I feel like the same exact thing happened for you. It was time for not only me, but you and all of us to look at our entire life that led to this, what that meant, and we had to look at every part of it and every part of ourselves in order to heal in the best possible way. So now it's the investigation. You're on America's Most Wanted. You escaped to Wisconsin, I believe, right? Milwaukee. And they catch you in a crawl space in Milwaukee. You end up going to jail. You end up being arrested. And now we get into the trial. And I have to say, during the trial, there was a lot of things said about me. The defense attorneys decided to come up with this crazy made-up story that was a completely fabricated story about my supposed involvement, recruiting Mr. Butler in a grocery store or something, and that we were having an affair and that I was the ringleader. And I didn't even know about this until I wasn't allowed in court, but Dave was. Dave was there every step of the way, and the only person at the sentencing, when all was said and done, that turned around and looked at me and said that they were sorry and looked straight at my daughter and said that they were sorry was you. And there's the thread of humanity that keeps showing up in your life. But talk me through this trial. And Dave, I really want you to come in because I wasn't there. I didn't know what was happening in the courtroom until I saw my name being smeared across the front pages of newspapers and on the news. And we're just talking to your friend that's here with us today, Joey. And he was saying, like, all of these lies made people think certain things about me and hate me, really. And there's hate all over the internet about me. Talk me through what was going on for both of you. This is where I really want you to jump in and talk about the trauma that you witnessed and what started now the trial. This is a whole other piece of it that I think for both of us brought us to a whole other level of when our connection on a different level began, when you turned around and said you were sorry. And that led me to something that we're going to get to in just a little bit. But let's get into what happened in that
trial.
Let's get into what happened in that courtroom and the trauma that you saw when you showed up to see us.
Yeah. So, you know, when I got a call that she was, and first of all, it's incredibly honorable for you to be here right now. It's so, you know, we know you at this point. We know how much work you've done. I know there's cameras and everything kind of focused on us, and but you know, when the cameras shut off, we're hugging it out, and we're super proud of you, you know, and where you're at today. So congratulations, you know.
It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I just, this isn't about this interview, you know, it's just, we're so super happy for you, and it's an honor to be here, you know, in an environment where we can all just kind of sit down and talk about, you know, things in our past. And I have some, and Michelle has some, and you have some, and the fact that we can sit here through such deep, deep, deep trauma and there's so many layers of it. You know, no one's even talked about the fact that you had to go through 20 years, you know, incarcerated for something that you did. You know, that's a level that no one's even talking about.
We're about to
a
get
whole
there.
lifetime of trauma.
We're about to get there.
So anyway, I just wanted to say that. But when I got the call that Michelle had been through this, she said, I just went through a kidnapping. I didn't know what that meant. So I went in and I talked to my boss and said, my sister's just been through this ordeal. And he says, you got to go right now. I had no idea what this meant. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't really know, what severe trauma looked like until I got to her hotel. They had put her in a hotel room. And I went there to meet you, and you opened the door, and it was just pure fear. Like Michelle was totally gone. There was no Michelle. You couldn't ask Michelle her name or she would break down. Like it was all gone. So that was the beginning for me of entering into this going, okay, so she can't even draw her own name. Like she's so traumatized. And when I tried to think about, what it would feel like to go through a period of time where I had a bomb strapped to me, I never could actually even come close to touching down to what that would do to my nervous system in terms of, every second having to do everything right to protect my life and my daughter and make this thing right. So I've tried to process that. I'm obviously way past trying to process what that would feel like. Not a lot of people know what that's like, the trauma attached to that. So that was the beginning. I think Bria at the time she was so afraid she couldn't go to the bathroom by herself. So she would pee in a corner. She would, the trauma from that incident was you just can't put that into words. What something like that would do to people and their nervous systems. So we get to the trial part of this, and there had been, because it was gang, related, and we had known that she was the only eyewitness of this gang-related crime. We felt that, and so did the DA and the gang task force people thought that she was in harm's way, but they wouldn't put her in protective custody. So we didn't know really what to do with Michelle, so we thought, okay, to alleviate the trauma piece, we're going to move her to the beach, which is what we did. So we put her in a little home right on the beach where she could see the dolphins and she could, experience the coast and the peace of the coast. And it was not about the coast or it was the lights outside, and it was the skateboarders outside. And so
loud noises and the people crashing beer bottles and the people partying, and it was trigger after trigger after trigger. I had locks on all the windows. I had booby traps. Remember, I had booby traps in the hallway.
Yeah. So
I had to booby trap my whole house. I was in a totally different kind of prison than what you were in. I was in a whole other kind of prison. That was really. I thought it would be beautiful and healing, and maybe in some ways it was, but that was super difficult. That was a tough one.
So fast forward, she ends up in Alaska.
Yeah, I drive from San Diego to Alaska.
To Alaska, because we know that she's going to be safe in Alaska. Yeah. Nobody knows her in Alaska.
Right.
And
no reminders of anything.
There's no reminders of anything.
As far away from all of this as I can possibly be. And how about the Alaskan wilderness? Okay,
and the trial hasn't started, so nobody knows at this point that the defense attorneys are going to create this, scenario where she's involved. So none of us know. We're thinking everybody's going to jail. Everybody's going to do their time. Everybody's been caught. We have no idea that this justice system we're about to experience has nothing to do with the truth at all, And so I think she comes, the trial is coming. So we move her back into San Diego from Alaska. We walk through a grocery store. This is the very first time. And on the front page of this paper, it says bank manager's role in question in bank robbery. Front page news, big old bold letters. And so it was, and she just lost it again, right? So it was like a re-victimization of something that she had already been going through by the press and this justice system that we were trusting that were going to protect her. So it was a brand new thing, and that's kind of where it was like, okay, you're not allowed in stores, you can't watch the news, you can't go.
He cut me off from everything.
She couldn't, you couldn't give her any information because all she would see, if she saw a gun hanging on a wall, she would freak out and run out of the store. Oh my God, there was a gun. So the trauma was just so severe during that period of time that she couldn't be involved in any of that. So I tried to water down everything that I was learning in the courtroom as I was learning it, and realizing that she was about to go through a whole nother set of attacks from defense attorneys that were going to paint her out to be a kidnapper, a liar, a bank robber, and all of that.
A terrible mother.
The terrible mother,
a stripper, a prostitute, all of it.
All of that. So that trial piece was difficult. You know, it was really difficult. Fast forward 20 years. You know, everybody, did their time. There's so many levels to this. I'm so glad that we got past that.
Me too.
They went through a lot of the work that it had been, it's been decades of work to get to a point to where, there would be grace to hold this.
Well, I want to fast forward to Bria and I, and again, I want to go back to the question that happened while I was driving for 9 days to Alaska by myself. And this wasn't a decision that I just made flippantly. It was a calling that I'm going to say divine, creator, God, whatever you want to call it, was absolutely calling me to do this. And I couldn't understand why, after everything I'd been through, kidnapped, all the stuff that I'd been through, and I'm being asked by divine creator to get in a car and drive for 4,200 miles alone with no money, 104,000 miles on my old car, and I couldn't afford to stay in hotels, so I had to camp the whole way. Why am I being called to do this? And I actually didn't want to do it. But this calling kept telling me, if you trust me, you will do this. And this is a real thing. This is what was just coming up in my soul over and over and over. And it was on that road trip that I started wondering about who are these people as men? Who were they before this? What happened to them? What was a decision in their life that caused them to take such a hard left turn? That after the trial happened, and I decided, okay, as a mother, my daughter is the catalyst to every single decision I have made on my healing path. It's been God, creator, my daughter. Like this is everything that I have done has been for those two purposes, or those are my why, or that's what's been driving me this entire time. And so when I sat back and thought, how is hanging on to being anger going to help us? How is hating anybody going to help us? How is resentment going to help us? How is teaching her to be prejudiced for the rest of her life? How is it going to help her to teach her to be afraid of men for the rest of her life? If I don't, as a mother right now, teach her that there's another way, I'm going to cause her more harm than you could have ever caused her. I would have been the one to cause her more harm than anybody if I didn't decide that we are going to dive into this from a perspective of love, understanding, compassion. I'm going to teach you not to hate. I'm going to teach you not to stay angry and bitter. I'm going to teach you not to judge the masses by the actions and desperate actions of a few. I'm going to teach you that we can be different. We can handle this different. We can do this well. We can do this with love. And we can do this with absolute radical forgiveness. And when I say that, I don't mean that from saying, oh, we're going to forgive and it's going to make what this person did okay. That's not what this is about. This is about saying, out of everything that happened, if I'm going to choose to learn the lessons to carry forward in a positive way, I've got to let go of the negative. That to me is what forgiveness is all about. How do I let go of the negative of a situation and grab that lesson and grab everything I can learn? Because when we're going through things like this, and you can talk about what you went through with the car situation in a minute, because this is a perfect time to talk about it. How fertile is the ground? How fertile is the soil for growth and learning when you are, after you've gone through something absolutely horrific like this? How fertile is the soil for growth and learning and the potential for understanding and the potential for compassion and the potential for love? If you choose it, it is there. There's another choice you can make. You can hate and be angry and be bitter. You can choose that. But what's that going to lead to? How is that going to help you raise your child in the best way? So for me, it was, here's the choices that I have. And out of those choices that I have, which one is going to have the best possible outcome that is light and not darkness? How do you choose a life that is full of light instead of a life that is full of darkness? And for me, it was sitting down with my daughter and saying, hey, it's time to let go of all this darkness. It's time to let go of all this hate. It's time to let go of all this negativity. And how we're going to do that? You remember the man that said he was sorry in that courtroom? We're going to write him a letter. And we're going to tell him how we feel about letting all this go. And we're going to tell him we're rooting for him to heal how we've healed. And we sat down and we wrote that letter to you. And we mailed that letter to you. Talk about getting that letter.
I got that letter about 11 years into my sentence. I was in San Luis Obispo at the time. By then I had lost my appeal on the highest court. I got divorce papers on my birthday. Type of things that happen, like, you know.
Your cancer diagnosis.
My granny, last time I talked to her, told me she couldn't even get in the car, so I knew I probably wouldn't see her again, which I haven't, and I didn't get to. And then they told me I was diagnosed with cancer. So that was a whole another battle. And I went through all that stuff. But then I got that letter, you know. And it was while I was starting to heal from my cancer. And I just sat with that letter and was like, wow. I thought I was going to get a letter saying how fucked up I was and all the trauma I caused. And
what did the letter say?
I remember telling me that you and Bria no longer see me as that same person that did that to y'all that night and that morning. And life is so much bigger than how we used to look at you. And you told me a story about what you've been through and your family, you know, and told me a little bit about you, and I just sat with it. And the next morning I got up for breakfast, went to brush my teeth, and looked at my face and was like, this is not how I was raised. Like, how did I get myself in this deep hole with triple life in 32 years, you know? And that day, I chose to take that other foot out, from one foot in, one foot out, and just become the man I would want my daughters to be with. Just as simple as that. And take any groups that talk to any trauma I've caused, not just this case, but any times I've been away, or any trauma that I felt was in my household, in any way I can equip myself to make sure that that doesn't happen again by me or anybody attached to me. And if I can stop it, I would stop it. in any which way, not just the crime, but just the whole crazy life I had adapted and normalized.
How long did it take you from the time you got the letter, received the letter, to the time you opened the letter and actually read the letter?
I read the letter that night.
Right when you got it?
We're not allowed to contact our victims, but your victims can contact you. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if it was a trick, because I remember it was from a publishing company.
Dave has a similar story about something he went through. And his victim's wife, and I'll let you tell it, his victim's wife wrote a book and he got his hands on it, and you tell the story. I'm not going to tell the story. Just briefly tell, because this, and when we ended up finally meeting you for the very first time, it was interesting because the only person in that room that could relate to exactly what you were going through, sitting down across from your victim, somebody you have harmed so greatly, and sitting across from them and getting to the point where you could do that and where forgiveness was there on the part of the person who caused so much harm is Dave.
So, yeah, where do you start with that? So at 15, I ran away. Same thing. My first arrest, I was 17. At 17, I had so many warrants. I had warrants from, I didn't believe in showing up for court. I was in survival, desperation mode, same type of thing. And
Drugs, alcohol.
Drugs, alcohol, been getting high since I was, 12, 13, somewhere in there. My last day in high school, I was arrested for being passed out in a TV production class, dragged through the hallways. And at 17, when they arrested me in Westlake, I had warrants from San Diego all the way to Santa Barbara, so I spent 3 or 4 months going from one jail to the other, San Bernardino, Orange County, San Diego, LA County, and I'm a 17-year-old white boy with long blonde hair going through LA County like hardcore. And because of my background, even at such a young age, every jail that I went to, I was a red band. So I was 23 and I never saw day rooms, none of that stuff. They'd put me in with the hardcore criminals. You know how that is, because I was a violent kid. Nobody knew that. So I get through that, 4 months of that. And fast forward, I had two young sons at 20 and 21. Neither one of them planned. No high school experience, no education. The only thing I had was 2 parents that, yes, we grew up in a difficult environment, but they both worked their ass off. And when I look back now, that was probably my saving grace, was I knew that if I just worked, things would work out. So I was always on the hustle. It didn't matter what I did. I mean, at 16, I got a janitorial job, and I was the best damn janitor on the planet. And every job that I took from that point forward, that was always my goal, was to, be the best at that. And I didn't know any other way. All I knew is I had kids to feed, and I had to feed myself. I had to, house us. I had no idea how to do any of that. And it took work to provide that. So that was kind of, my, the similarities when I hear what you went through, kind of, just to give you an idea. It wasn't perfect. There was incarceration, there was violence, there was craziness, there was, the drug dealing, there was the using, there was all of that stuff. And then you fast forward at, I'm 27 years old, and I wake up to a man smashing through my windshield in a DUI accident. And he happened to be, I was coming back from a fishing trip at the Anacapa Islands, and believe it or not, I was the designated driver with my older brother sleeping in the back. Nobody knew that I had a meth problem. Not even my brother had any idea that I was on meth at the time. So I was up for 2 days, and then drinking vodka, orange juice, drinks on the way back from the islands, thinking I'm okay to drive. And next thing you know, I'm on Oxnard, which is kind of this parallel. Like you and I end up in Oxnard for your amends. And this whole time, right down the street is where my accident was. So I wake up, you know, on an underpass where this man couldn't get off the side of the road because the curbs were built up so high. So he broke down in the middle of the street, and he told his wife at the time, he said, Shirley, you know, get out. We're in a very dangerous situation. And it was under a bridge underpass. And here I come. And next thing you know, he's smashing through my windshield. And he was at the back of the car. It was an incredibly violent crime. It was a crime. You know, I made the decision to stay up for 2 days. I made the decision to drink and drive, and I got in that car, and I just smoked this man while he was standing out at the back of his car. So it wasn't, I mean, I took that door off, all of that stuff right in front of his wife. And I had no idea what happened because I was nodding off. And when I kind of came to, I was taking my shirt off and handing it to his wife, who stood next to me, and telling her I'm really sorry, while they were trying to revive Jerry, who had been thrown 90 feet, which is about a quarter of a football field. So he was pretty smashed up in his early 60s. He was in ICU for 5 weeks. He was in the hospital for 5 months. And he was a church builder and built churches all over the world. So there were people globally calling into this hospital right there in Oxnard. They had to open up a whole different call center because of the amount of people calling to pray for him, make sure that he was okay. So the parallel in this, what was really interesting was when my son went through a heroin drug addiction issue, and that got pretty bad. And at some point I had to look at my own life and say, I'm part of the reason for this happening. My parenting, all of these things. So I basically, he asked me to show up to a recovery meeting, and I had watched the change. I'd never given up on him, never stopped supporting him, never stopped enabling him until I stopped enabling him because it was best. And it was when he finally, the very last time, him and I talked, I told him, I believe in you, you can do this. Just go to this rehab, and he did. And it was a few months after that, I noticed vast changes in him through recovery. And he asked me to show up and go to this recovery group with him, which I did. And that was the beginning of my recovery. When I realized, sitting in that room of a bunch of men telling the truth, that I had been denying the truth my whole life, that I was damaging the people that I care about, I took that 1 foot
out,
as you would put it, and made the decision to partner with him in his recovery. And in doing that, I went back and I started looking like, and this is really interesting because you and I just had this a men's conversation when we walked in about this card you have, and you're still looking for this person that you traumatized over stealing this card when you were a kid, and that's how deep it gets. So for me, I had to look at the areas in my life that I had been running, and obviously this situation with this man was the number one issue I needed to deal with. So I set out to do that, and I jumped online looking for him, wanting to make an amends to him in my recovery process, is to find him. And I found him online through his wife's blog. And so when I typed in his name, his wife came up, and I want to kind of shorten this up a little bit. But when I found her blog, there was a picture of him standing there in his 80s with at-risk kids. And it was the very first time in 20-something years that I realized he wasn't dead, he wasn't crippled, he wasn't all the things that I thought he was for most of my life. So I had my own prison sentence going on that nobody knew about, that I was running from, that wasn't even real. He had totally recovered, There was a link on that webpage that said books I've written. I didn't know that she was a prolific writer. And when you click on that link, a smashed windshield came out. The way they have this set up was this smashed windshield comes at you in 3D. And it was called 1,000 Pieces. And it was their story about this incident that happened right there on Oxnard Boulevard, right down the street from where you and I met. So here we leave from San Diego. I buy the book. I walked in, told my wife, there's a book. We ordered the book. The book comes, and
Back to the letter.
So back to the letter, yeah. Right? So this book, I set it in my office, and I'm so afraid of this book because I've been running from this story for 20 years. And
you didn't know what it was going to say about you.
I didn't know what it was going to say, but they had all the information from the grand jury, all of the investigations, and it was not just what I was going through and where I was in my life, but it was also their entire family. The entire story of the real damage was in that book, and it was massive, unbelievable damage had been done to an entire community over that one act. And it turned out to be a miracle. The book was a miracle. The end of it was a miracle. But I didn't know any of that. So it took me weeks. Every time I looked at that book on my shelf, I would have a panic attack. And then one morning in the middle of the night, something told me, oh, you're supposed to get up and read that book. So I got up, and in 5 hours, I read the book. And at the back of the book, I thought it was the publisher's number at the back of the book that had been stamped in the book, and it was actually Shirley, the wife's cell phone number. So I text this book thinking it's the publisher, and it's Shirley and Jerry at home, and they get this message from this strange man named Dave going, I'm the one that was 20-something years later, I'm the man that was driving the red truck in the book, I'd like to meet the family. So fast forward the drive, so I do meet him. He's in his 80s. So pastors got together. Everybody made sure it would be safe for him because it was such a big wound and something to open that we thought eventually. But it wasn't even like that. I went through this whole thing. I took the book. I stood right at the scene of the accident. I went to the hospital. I sat in the ICU. I met with the chaplain. I went through the whole thing to try to feel like what I had done to this family. And then when I got to him, the first thing he told me was, he said, Dave, he said, don't worry about a thing. He says, I just want you to know before you say a single word, I forgave you while I was still in the hospital.
And so when you come back to you and I, and that letter that you received, and then you take the step the next day to take that foot out.
Yeah.
And you decide, how many years later did it take you to decide? Because it took Dave a really long time to decide to reach back out. How long did it take you to write me back? And what was it that told you, this is the time, this is the moment for me to respond to them? And how did you come up with what to say? Because that 3-page letter of you responding to me I read it over and over and over. I mean, you don't know how many times I have read that first letter that you wrote. All right, so we're talking about what it was like for you to finally decide you were going to respond to this letter, and what it was that you wanted to convey in this letter. And I remember reading you saying, I just tore your life apart and you helped me rebuild mine. And I no longer see myself as a monster. And your words were, you helped humanize me again. Talk about that. Talk about how long it took you to respond, but the work that you did between the time you received our letter until you finally responded. which was just during the pandemic. It wasn't that long ago. Tell me about that process. What went on within you, and when you knew it was the right time to respond, and what you really wanted to say to us? Tell me about that.
Well, I sat with that letter, and I knew that number one, I had to definitely get back to my roots of how I was raised. Because I looked at myself and said, how did you get yourself in here, man? With 3 life sentences in 32 years. That's not how you were raised. You got kids, you got a wife, you got siblings, you got a family that cares about you. How did you get here? And that's when I said, man, I wouldn't be too happy if my daughters ended up how a man I was at the time. Although I had one foot in, one foot out, it wasn't who I would want my daughters to be with, or my sisters, or my nephew to be like, nephews. So I just had to be the person I would want them to be, and get back centered, and get back to roots.
That's one of the things you actually put in the letter, is that I'm now the man that I would be proud for my daughters to be with. What brought you to becoming the man that you would now be proud of your daughters to be with? What was the catalyst to that? How did you get there?
Well, number one, I wanted to do that for my daughters, and to start to make some type of amends, even if it was indirect amends at the moment, because I know I couldn't write you back. And I was still grasping, is it a trick?
What kind of trick? Like, for me, I'm like, how could there be a trick? I don't even know what kind of trick. What would that even look like?
Because it came from a publishing company, right?
Oh, yeah.
And 48 hours totally did us wrong.
Yeah, and I never.
They did not put they told us to write them, send pictures so we can seem human, because all they had was mug shots and incarcerated pictures of us that they could use, or
Pictures in the courtroom, which you guys were dressed really nice in the courtroom, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys were dressed well, put together, and I'm like, they had to present a certain way in court, so they used those too. Did you know I didn't know that they even contacted you? I had no idea.
2 of us, not all 3, but so when they contacted me, I did send them what they sent. They didn't use not one picture, didn't use nothing I wrote them. And so I thought it may be a trick again with the media stuff. So I didn't try to write. I knew I would get in trouble if I wrote without prior approval. So I just sat on that letter for a long time. And I wrote a letter so many times, but I never sent it. And how I was able to know it was the right time was when, fast forward years now, I'm in San Quentin, and I'm going to continuous programs because they have a lot at the time I don't know about now. But I was doing a Restorative Justice Symposium, and it involves you being there all day. You bring your lunch, and a lot of outside guests come in, and people that have been doing restorative justice work, which is how I met Dr. K. Noel Amherst, my spiritual elder.
Which is interesting, because I actually started working in restorative justice and was one of those people on the panel that would go to Restorative Justice Symposium. I wasn't at that one, but I had spoken at Restorative Justice Symposiums with Martina. I had been working with her for years, so it's interesting that you were doing that, probably a lot at the same time that I was doing it at other places. So the parallels, just the things that are bringing us together, even though we don't even know it, are already happening. Like I was doing that same, I was working in that same realm, just in a different way than you, pretty much at the same time.
So it was just that the universe lined everything up, and I asked him how would I be able to get in touch with my victim if my victim has wrote me. And he was like, wait a minute, you got a letter from your victim? I was like, yeah, I've had it for years. I just don't know how to respond in the right way where I don't get in trouble. And Noel was part of Martina's team, And so he got away to get the letter to his organization, and they started the process to get approval for us to write. And then we went through some letters, and it was powerful.
Yeah.
It was powerful. It was just medicine in just the letters.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, it's just being perfectly transparent and authentic. At that point in my life, I was willing to use whatever, like I am still today, and my sister. We were willing to use any of our traumas. We've been abused in every which way you can think of, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, sexually, all as kids. So we use all of that now to empower everybody else so they don't go through it. And so when I got that letter, it was like, man, I'm definitely got to be walking on my right path. So I kind of like I felt free even though I was locked up at the time, because I was in the middle of my path and I didn't have one foot in, one foot out. I spent a lot of time with people that have both feet out, but it's only to try to see where they're at and spend some time, because they're just starting their beginning of their trauma doing time. And they can either hurt you or help you, and it's so easy to navigate in the prison system, and it's always dead ends, and it's always trouble. But it's not impossible to navigate and do something positive and work on yourself and build on all your shortcomings and everything that you thought that you couldn't fix or you couldn't dig deep enough. When you become transparent, everything became easier. The paths, doors started opening. I learned how to litigate, get a little bit of time off here and there. Laws started passing. And then, before you know it, it was doors, windows, and paths just completely clear for me.
So I want to bring something up that I thought was remarkable that I found out about you. And when we received this letter from you, and we read this letter from you, for us, it was so evident that you had not only done the work that you had done on yourself and what you had written, but for us to sit back and say, for someone to do the amount of work that you have done and get to this place where you can write this letter and be so transparent, like what you said, and be so honest and absolutely own everything that you did and take full responsibility for it and own everything that you did and come to the point where you became the man who could write that letter to us in that environment, in one of the most difficult environments anybody could possibly ever imagined, actually healing and working on themselves in San Quentin. And not only did you heal yourself and work on yourself in San Quentin, you were helping other people heal. You became the man because of these letters. You became the man that helped other people heal. And not only like what your friend Joey said earlier, it's like you are helping the person heal that hurt you. You became that man too. And you ended up building, you ended up creating like a spiritual center or a walk. You literally ended up creating something to help other people heal in San Quentin prison. Tell us about it.
San Quentin was very resourceful with self-help groups, training groups, symposiums, college. I went to college in San Quentin, and just events, cancer walks, peace days. And so this is the stuff that San Quentin also was providing. So although they didn't play fair when it came to the litigation part of my visits, when they do something right, I would say they did something right, and they provided a lot of things to San Quentin for rehabilitation at the time. And I took advantage of everything they had to offer that spoke to me in my life and my shortcomings and things that I knew I needed to work on. And I didn't want to just address why I came to prison this time. I wanted to address every single time even the times I never got caught. So I just took whatever I could and crammed it into my schedule so that I would stay busy working on rebuilding on a solid foundation instead of a wobbly one, so that everything I built would be solid, like I told you in that letter. Yeah. And one of the biggest helps was meeting Dr. Noah Amhurt, because we were self-teaching ourselves IFA, and it's IFA, and it's a spiritual tradition that comes from West Africa, and it was brought over here when the slaves were forcefully brought to all parts of America. And it's just something that I tapped in and rerouted, even if it's the smallest of bloodline that I have, but it just awoke something in me that never has in no type of religious setting that I've ever been involved with. And I've been part of some and studied others, but nothing has grounded me like this, where I just call on my ancestors for help. And that also, along with that letter, that was like a major motivation for me. Because when I looked in that mirror, I knew I didn't just let everybody down and hurt people, but I had let my family down. I had let my ancestors down that paved the way for me. And that's why I wear this guy. All these skulls are my ancestors. So when I even think of complaining or thinking about sidestepping or backpedaling, I just grab this and be like, you better not even think about it, because they're rooting for me.
They're rooting for you.
And I apologize to your ancestors. That's how deep I went, because I created a trauma that will be either continued in your generational lineage and mine, or try to make some type of healing to that so it puts a stop to it. Because I don't want to be the cause of nobody continuing any generational wounds. That's why it's so deep for even that football card to get returned.
Mm-hmm. So here we go again, you and I, all of us, this deeply connected, and I'm going to just call it now today, friendship, relationship that we have, and you saying this is going to end with me. I'm going to put healing forward. We're the same exact thought process and reasons why I made the decisions that I made to choose love and understanding and forgiveness and compassion and be here with you and write that letter. And when your parole came up, when you were up for parole, we got a call saying he's up for parole. It's never happens. He's never going to get paroled. It never happens on the first time he gets parole. There's no way, no big deal. But by then we'd received your letter. And then we had already also received letter number 2. And we had already made this decision, Bria and I and Dave, all three of us talked about this. And we said, we're going to speak up on his behalf. We feel like it's time for him to go be with his family. And because of COVID, we weren't able to go to see you in San Quentin, which we had planned to do through Victim Offender Dialogue. We weren't able to do that. Your parole came up, and I couldn't be on the call because it was running really late, and I had another appointment that I had to go to. So who showed up for your parole for you? Tell them who showed up for you on that day.
So I'm at my parole, and there was a time period where people were supposed to be able to talk in my behalf or to oppose me. The only one that opposed me was the district attorney, and they usually do, you know.
Yeah.
That's kind of
It's
their
rare.
job.
Yeah, it's their job, unless it's just a rare, and then they will also not fight it, you know. Yeah. But of course, he you know, they just felt like I needed a little more time. But what he didn't know is, like, I've been doing this work for nearly a decade. Mm-hmm. So when I didn't even think I was coming home, before I was put in a position when AB 1308 came out, where if you were 25 and under when you committed your crime, long as it wasn't certain crimes like sexual crimes, arsons, and specific ones, then you will be eligible to go to the board. And so
Regardless of like a life or multiple life?
Yeah, regardless of a life, if you were 25 and under. So if you had multiple life, you had 100 to life, but you served 20 to 25, depending on your crime. I had 7 to life, so I had 3 consecutive 7 to lives. So the way they calculate things, I would go on my 20th. So I went a little bit after my 20th. I would have gone earlier, but it was COVID and postponed everything. Yeah. And I was a little pissed at the time because I said I'm ready, but it only helped me get even more ready and dig even deeper. And it helped me connect to something that I didn't realize, you know, and...
Which was what?
It's a guy named Aaron Showtime Taylor, and he works with the Warriors up north. He's an awesome guy. He does his own podcast. So he would sit with his guitar on the 5th tier and play, and I would come listen. And he asked my opinion, but he would always share words of wisdom and vice versa. And so we were talking about getting ready, and he asked me about what was my triggers, and you know he would work with us like that. And I told him it was losing control, and he asked me what happened. And I explained when I lost control in a creek in Santa Barbara, and I wasn't supposed to be in there, and I almost drowned. They pulled me out, and I was all stinky. I was maybe like 5. And I got my ass in trouble because I shouldn't have been by the creek. I thought I was gonna get this, I got this. So I lost control. In the pool, in the YMCA, I'm supposed to stay here. What I do, try to get away. Almost drowned to death. Almost lost control. At home, growing up, when I lose control, I'd get my ass in trouble if shit wasn't done and ready when mom gets home. So then one day, fast forward, I'm involved in gangs. I'm in the neighborhood. For some reason, this time, I didn't want to have my gun with me. I got robbed in my own neighborhood, and I lost control. I was the victim. I was the one looking at that gun that time. So I said, from this point forward, I'm never losing control, and I kept that gun with me. I did good, stayed away from guns like I told you, keeping my nose clean and stuff. But I came back that time, and I didn't want to lose control. So I did the same thing that was done to me and victimized Michelle and your guys' family. Because I had that losing control thing, I'm not going to lose control. So I did the same thing that was done to me, to you and your family. And once I dug deep, and he helped me connect them dots. And then everything, like when you connect your dots on a picture, sometimes they don't align right. But once we had that conversation, I went back in my cell and got my parole stuff and looked at it, and I was like, this is what I've been missing. And that helped me get more prepared. Amazing. By that delay. And that helped me with the last dots of putting everything together and realizing this went way deeper than just this crime. It was my childhood losing control thing.
It's always way deeper.
And that's how I was able to put it together. So that was a good delay. And
then who showed up at your parole?
Man, I thought nobody was going to show up, and I was ready either way, you know. If I get a denial, hey, I just got to do what they tell me and I'll be back. But at the last minute, Bria gets through, and come to find out later, she had been trying to get through and she couldn't. She couldn't. So Noel called too. Hey, there's people trying to get through. I found out later too. He helped out, and he got Bria through. And I heard her voice. And when I heard her voice, I couldn't hold it. I couldn't hold it because how was this little person that I kidnapped and thought she was going to die with her mom and others going to have my back?
Yeah, that's big.
But that's not even the biggest one. The biggest one is when she told me that what I did to her made her stronger. That's what hit me. What I did to her was nothing compared to her medical things that she went through afterwards. That all that helped her prepare for that battle that was way bigger than what I put her through. And for somebody to say that was a child at the time, really humbled me. And really showed me that there's beautiful people in the world, and the doors open up when you're doing the right thing. And
What did she say that day?
she said that
You guys need tissue?
Got it.
she said that Robert has been doing a lot of work. We've been following what he's been doing, and we want him to come home. And I know they was pretty probably shocked of that. And that felt great when they told me I was found suitable. But let me tell you what felt so effing awesome, even better than that, when we got to talk via phone.
We did.
And we couldn't do a VOD because we were in the middle of doing things, but it all lined up. And we talked, and I would never ask for forgiveness because that's not my thing, right? How can I ask somebody for forgiveness? That's not my job. My job is just to do what I can do to make amends. And so when you said that you guys told me you forgive me, that day was more awesome than me being found suitable because this huge weight came off me, and I immediately seen ancestors, even without faces, smiling on both ends.
They were cheering.
And I told you that,
Yeah.
and I said that, and I was like, and that ties into what we did. So in San Quentin, we didn't have a spiritual grounds outside for indigenous belief systems other than Native Americans. So we fought to get a grounds there. It wasn't just our group, the Ifa group, it also was the Odinist and the Odinist, the Ifa group, and I can't remember the other one. They're like a natural type group. A lot of people believe, even myself at the time, so I sat down with them, thought they were devil worshippers, but they were not.
The pagans.
The Odinists were more like the pagans, and they were like pagans too, but they were more earthly. They were more into nature like we are, and treating the earth
love that.
like it's going to take care of you the way you take care of it, you know? And so that's what I took a liking to, so much so that one of the guys, like, he said, hey man, you guys are more together, can I come to your group? And he came to our group, and despite it being more of an African-based indigenous group, and he's Caucasian, he came to our group, he's still part of our group. He's out living in Missouri. We went to our last spiritual ceremony.
Is that the guy you
That's
went
Tommy,
to?
yeah. And he came over there and never left, and just really practices it. And he's, man, I'm happy to say he's a beautiful healer, man.
So the things that you did at San Quentin for yourself extended out to what you did for other people because of this group, because you chose to take one foot out. You ended up being surrounded by these other people in these spiritual groups, and you ended up, it very rarely happens that someone's found suitable for parole the first time that they're ever up for parole. My daughter speaks up on your behalf. You end up being released. I get a photo of you the day that you're released, and you're standing outside of San Quentin, and I get sent a picture to my phone, a text picture of you the moment you get out of San Quentin, standing there free. I'm cheering for you, and I literally just go, I cannot wait to meet him. Like, I cannot wait to meet him. And we dive in to putting together what turned out to be our very first face-to-face meeting since that night. And it's at your parole. And we now are getting ready to meet face-to-face for the very first time since I saw you at the sentencing when you said, I'm sorry, our journey is now coming to where we're now going to meet face-to-face. Dave's going to be there. Bree is going to be there. And guess who else is going to be there? Your family. Your mom and your sister. Guess who's with us here today that we need to bring in and introduce? Your sister, Lorena. Get on over here. We got to hear from you.
Thank you for watching our interview, and I wanted to let you guys know that the youth organization that I work for is called Freedom for Youth out of Santa Barbara, California, and it's in the borderline of Goleta and Santa Barbara. We work with kids from all over Santa Barbara County, and if you want to know anything about our organization, you can look us up at freedomforyouth.org or Robert at freedomforyouth.org. We're doing awesome things with awesome people, awesome youngsters, and any help or any questions that you have, you can reach out, and we'll see what we can do to make some magic happen for you in the future. Thank you.